Welcome everyone to In Your Best Interest, an ALM First podcast, a show that explores common depository challenges, giving you an insider's view of the latest market trends and shares stories and insights from industry leaders. I'm your host, Mike Enzweiler. Credit unions today face the challenge of not just surviving, but thriving in a rapidly changing financial landscape. From digital transformation and AI adoption to building cultures of innovation and improving financial performance, successful institutions must balance bold ideas with disciplined execution. For credit unions navigating turnarounds or seeking to reinvent themselves, this requires a fundamental shift in mindset, from maintaining the status quo to embracing a startup mentality. Today, I'm joined by Chad Lukowski, Chief Operating Officer, and Bob Ledger, Chief Financial Officer, both from Workers Credit Union. They'll share their remarkable turnaround story and discuss how adopting a startup mindset has transformed their institution. We'll explore their innovative approach to governance, their thoughtful implementation of AI to enhance employee productivity, and practical strategies for building a culture where ideas turn into execution. From mobile branches and vibe coding to ditching ITMs and building secondary market capabilities, Chad and Bob will show us what's possible when you combine innovation with strong fundamentals.
Chad and Bob, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks,
Great
Mike.
to be here.
You know, before we get started, I'm really excited about the conversation we're about to have. But before we get started, just to kind of give our listeners a little insight about, you two beyond the bio I read, give us a fun fact about yourselves. We'll start with you, Chad.
So an interesting, fun fact about myself is I was never a credit union person prior to joining Workers. And I joined Workers on a 90-day help the new CEO out. And now I've been there for 2.5 years and I'm currently the COO. So background, not in credit unions. It was in banking for a good 14 years. And then previously spent 10 years building fintechs.
So temporary assignment has led to a little bit of a career here.
Temporary assignment has led to a career.
All right.
In fact, I think that's how Jay said it. He said, do you want to make this a career? He said, this is kind of fun.
That's great.
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. How about you, Bob?
Live in Maine, work in Massachusetts, and a dog guy with 2 cats and no dogs.
There's a story there that's probably best talked about over a beer. That's awesome. All right, well, let's dig right in. So, I know both of you are relatively new to Workers, and it's no secret. Workers, was in some trouble a few years ago and is a great turnaround story. So what's the biggest mindset shift that the new leadership has brought to Workers?
From my perspective, and it goes back to sort of a conversation that I had with Jay before I sort of embarked on the journey to assist. When Jay took the job in July of 23, we met for coffee. He's like, I think we need to run it like a startup. And I have most recently spent the last decade running startups. I said, well, I can help you with that. He's like, all right, why don't you join me as chief of staff for the next 90 days? And it ended up being through the end of 23. Then I'm still there, and now I'm the COO. So it has continued into a career. But really, the basis that we can operate like a startup, which means obviously moving fast, breaking things, fixing things, and doing it in concert with the rest of the team, it has really been, I think, a large foundation for us to build from to make this all possible.
Yeah, and I would add to that we had to have a mindset shift that if we kept doing things the same way, that we would heal over time, but that would be a really long runway. And it's also not what the desire or the vision of the board was or what our CEO was. So we had to adapt different, not just business practices, but also evolve our culture and change our mindsets to one of innovation and forward-looking rather than just staying in place.
Yeah, and actually, Bob brings up a interesting point that I think is definitely worth speaking of, and that is, our management team largely hails from Colorado. So Jay lives in Colorado, a few miles away from myself, who lives in Colorado. Our chief people officer lives in Colorado. Our performance excellence officer, which I'll get into a little bit later, also from Colorado. Our deputy chief risk officer is from Colorado, and a couple different strategy people too. Our VP of strategic initiatives is also from there. So it's unique that we've been able to create sort of this culture and change the culture, a new culture within Workers, doing it in a hybrid form. A lot of it has been. I've got a lot of air miles since I started.
Yeah.
I do spend a lot of time in the office, and that goes for all of those that are not based in Massachusetts. But we've been able to do it, and I think largely because we have shown the employees at Workers, which there's a lot of tenure at Workers. Matter of fact, my head underwriters celebrated her 50th year employed by Workers.
Wow.
While 50 is unique, we have a lot of people that are in the 30s.
Yep.
So it's hard to get them to change. And when I first came there, to give you an idea of culture, it's best understood by Jane introduced me, and I expected everybody, if you think of like the movie Office Space, TPS reports, red staplers.
What exactly do you do here?
That's Jay's guy. Rather, on our Wednesday all-staff call, I end up getting Teams messages that say, I understand that you fly across the country and you have 2 children. Thank you for helping save us. And that right there, I still have those messages in my Teams. That defines what our culture is and why it turned from 90 days, 120 days to a career. Jay will often say this is a franchise worth or a name worth saving, and Workers were the 4th or 5th oldest credit union, and it's definitely a place worth saving. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, Jay sets the tone at the top for us as an innovative institution that while we do things, and I'm sure we'll talk about AI and its role in us advancing, it's also institutional for us to be innovative, and we've built it into a structured process for ideation, test and learn pilots, cross-functional ownership, and so that when we talk about innovation, it's not just something that we're waiting for a vendor to bring to us and to roll out in 90 days, but rather something that we work across the institution. And I think that's one of our biggest strengths is that we bring in people from different areas, different disciplines, and different experience, both into the finance area, but into the lending area as well, because we can't have the same minds who have spent their entire career in the finance area coming up with innovative financial ideas. And so, on our outco, we have people from IT, from HR, from business process excellence, all different voices, and they're actually here too. So they're here at the conference learning, and I think that's really helpful for us to come up with new ideas.
So you hit on something. So you're trying all of these new ideas. We talked a little bit about AI. You're in a, I don't want to say a workout situation, but certainly a performance improvement, financial improvement kind of situation. There's clearly an emphasis on improving profitability and ROE and those kinds of things. So what are the biggest levers you're pulling to improve that financial performance? And where have you seen maybe some of these early wins?
Yeah, so ALM First has definitely been a big part of our success story from the beginning of 2024 forward. We started working with you at that time, and you've helped us to, one, make sure that we have all the blocking and tackling in place, that our policies are structured properly, but also to look at those things that we can change and affect, and then those other areas that are just going to take time to heal. But the Federal Home Loan Bank of Boston, they've also been a wonderful partner of ours. But just continually looking at our balance sheet and our financial situation, understanding what we can change, what we can't change, and for those things that we even have a notion that we might be able to improve upon, having that cross-functional discussion about how can we move this.
I think, everything obviously comes back to getting to profitability, and you said workout. It's fair to say It's definitely been a workout situation. Workers was in a tough spot. We've been able to obviously resuscitate it, and I would say in a quick amount of time, it's been 2.5 years. We've gone from a near-death experience to really being innovative. We've changed. The culture has changed. A culture that is inclusive of everybody. Everybody has a stakeholder. They're stakeholders to almost everything we do. We overly communicate a lot of things, which I think helps bring people along with you. And all of that aside, though, I don't think we have to mention the governance structure. We spent a lot of time in that 2.5 years building a governance structure that I I don't know this to be fact, Mike, but I would bet that we're in the top 5% of probably the best governed as far as governance policies and structures.
Mm-hmm.
We work with Dr. Amy Hillman from Arizona State as a consultant, as a board consultant. And I've heard her say that, like, we're one of the best governed credit unions. And that comes with a really supportive board who's been really open to doing this. And, Bob had mentioned about how our innovation, AI is everywhere. And people are thinking that certain things are AI and they're really not, or they're hesitant to jump into it, or they've completely jumped into it head first, forgetting about governance policy. So like we started at the very beginning and built a governance policy. So actual governance policy that's board approved around AI's usage within our organization and how that looks from a board perspective, an executive perspective, a risk perspective. And then we took the small steps, right? So it's, let's crawl before we walk and then walk before we run. We've run very intentional pilots with smaller groups. We've expanded those pilots. And the intention with us is to make you better at your job, not replace you at your job. And I think that that's really important because all the news is how we save. And there's been lots of reports out, MIT, Harvard, about there hasn't been really any cost savings recognized yet. And our intent is not to save on FTE. Our intent is to make our FTE more productive at what they do. Spend less time doing the monotonous stuff that AI can help you with so that you can spend more time either serving your direct reports, or if you're member facing, spend more time servicing the members rather than doing the back office tasks.
Let's say another thing that's been really important for us to make sure that we build a strong foundation and don't just change things tactically is the work that we've done on the human resources side. We have a fantastic chief people officer, Ellie Fordyce, and her team, and they're really an important part of the organization. They're just not where you go if you get in trouble, but rather they're those people that can help us all to be better employees and work better together. They've helped us to design an entirely new set of values, and the rollout of that has been really impressive and impactful. And that shows up in our employee NPS scores. We do not just member feedback and member satisfaction surveys, but an employee NPS too. And year over year, we had improvement in all of the 5 major categories. So we know that our employees are really buying into and really, the most important part of the changes that we're making.
That's pretty cool. So, the AI is obviously a hot topic. I think addressing the AI, especially with employees all over the country and trying to build that cultures, is a really big deal. Are there any other kind of innovative ideas that you brought to the credit union and its membership?
Yeah, before I hit on those, I just want to kind of tie up on the HR culture thing, which I think is unique to a credit union. On the first week of April, we will shut down for an entire day for WorkersPalooza. Everybody that's remote is flown in. We spend a day. Last year was only a half a day, and it was so well received because it's the first time that they've really done anything like this. And Ellie and her team, along with our learning development and our marketing team, actually there's a lot of people that participate in this, have TED Talks, and you include, it's not just us talking at them.
Yeah.
We bring everybody along. And this year, it was so big last year, the celebration is an entire day, April 8th, I believe. But everybody comes in, everybody will participate. We will shut all the branches down so that everybody, call center, everything shuts down so that they can participate and bring them together. And so you'll have 320 roughly employees all together in one venue for an entire day, which I think speaks, it's just an example of how important culture is to us and how important we believe it is, within the business that we're in.
A lot of the things that we do outside of AI that I think are innovative are meant to build larger innovative solutions. So it seems kind of silly, but we have walk-up music for our ALCO meetings. Which is
fun.
If you instead of having the employee of the month, you get to choose the walk-up music. But we do that in part to set the tone that this is a collaborative discussion, and we're not just there to read out reports that hopefully people understand 25% of them, but rather that to have an engaging discussion. So we've also taken the presentation materials that we have, and they all have a QR code on them, so that people can give feedback during the meeting about, does this make sense? Do I have questions about this? Is this a helpful report or is it not a helpful report? And we think the more engaged that we can get this group, And as an institution, the more likely we are to come up with some really innovative solutions that will help our members.
And I think, going back to additional things that's unique, I think, in the credit union space. And remember, I've not been in the credit union space. I think it's unique. I look around at my peers. I'm sure there's somebody out there that's doing also some really unique stuff. I've just not come across them yet. But a good example is, the credit union moved to ITMs at one point, 2019, 2020. And the ITMs are, with improvement of technology, are pretty much outdated.
Yeah.
They were a really cool thing. Others are still using them and using them effectively. They weren't effective for us.
Yep.
And so our team is, it was an expensive endeavor, but we're able to make a hard pivot away from them. And so we are moving away from ITMs. And I firmly, and I said this in a board meeting, if somebody is parking their car in today's age, when you have your phone and your computer, and they're walking in, they're not walking in to talk to a machine. Like, they could have talked to their phone or their computer.
Right.
They're walking in to talk to a human.
Yep.
And get serviced by the teller, by the branch manager, not an ITM. And so based on that, we've quickly moving away from ITMs. And we believe it's the right thing to do from a member, like how to differentiate ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Because just like airlines and banking, it's hard to differentiate yourself. It's hard to be super creative in this space. That being said, we've done some big, in that 2.5 years, we've done some big technology waves. Like, we've gone to a whole cloud-based phone system, which is a whole different thing for the team. We've then put a commercial lending LOS. We just finished putting in a new mortgage lending LOS and a pricing and product engine to partner with it, which goes into building the secondary market, which goes into working with ALM hedging, derivatives. So it looks more like a traditional mortgage shop than a credit union. We've switched our strategy from originating to put on our portfolio, just lend off of our balance sheet, to originating to sell. As we work on the traditional side of the market, where we sell to your traditional secondary market participants, but also setting up flow relationships with credit unions is part of what we're working on as well. Because as we've heard so far this week, there's a lot of people that have a lot of need. There's a big need for loans, right? Assets for them to hold. We produce a lot of them.
You price to the secondary market, which is huge. A lot of institutions don't.
Correct. So that's been one of the things that's been fun. That the technology, the openness to put in new technology, right? Jay always often uses like people, process, technology. I think I've shared. The people were great. We brought in Lacey Gettings, who is our Chief Performance Excellence, Business Process Management, Project Management Office. Working through like the Baldrige framework. So like the Four Seasons is an example of Great Baldrige. Elevations Credit Union is a Baldrige winner, but it's how well your processes are put together, that they're repeatable and scalable. So having her on board to kind of manage all of these changes that we've done in 2.5 years is remarkable. But that's the processes, and then we had to buy the technology, or in some instances, going back to AI really quick, is vibe coding. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of that.
Not heard of that term.
So vibe coding is literally using AI and inputting something like, build me something that is like X.
Okay.
Actually, now that I say it that way, X is, I wasn't meaning like
Elon
X.
Musk's.
I wasn't thinking X. But if you did prompt it, Claude or whichever AI bot, it would come back and say, well, what features do you want that are different than X, formerly Twitter? And then you start having a conversation with it, and it codes for you. And so our CIO has been spending a lot of time playing around with that. And, we will have way sooner than later, probably what I refer to as an operating system for the whole credit union.
Interesting.
Which is like CRM mixed with a core, mixed with like all these things. It's done by a small team, vibe coding. And I think that's the more powerful way to use AI that I can fairly certainly say most people are not doing.
Wow.
So we've been innovative in even branches. We've looked at which branches perform and don't perform, and we figure out like, how do we fix the gap when we leave a community while we build, as an example. You could put up a traditional trailer that you see sometimes, the wood trailers to fill a gap. It's not the right message. It's not the right service model. So we're in the midst, and I think I've shared with some of the people at ALM this week, of creating the business case of having a mobile branch. It's not quite an 18-wheeler. Bob likes to say it's an 18-wheeler, but not everybody can drive an 18-wheeler, but a mobile branch, and that's not unique. PNC's done it and been in the market with it. But I think that's a way. We're in a rural area of Massachusetts. We have an older demographic. We need to be going to where the members are. So if that's a nursing home, an old folks home, a community center where they all play bingo, whatever it is, we need to go to them. We've had a lot of snow this year in Boston. It'd be nice to go to them versus them not being able to come to us. So we're trying to think of things like a little bit differently, bring back some of the old, just like fashion, everything cycles back.
Yep.
So I believe in-person relationships are important. So if you're going to walk in, we're going to take care of you. And if you can't walk in, we really want to go to you.
And Bob, you got to figure out how to pay for all that, right?
That's right.
With the help of ALM first.
That's a great answer. Is there anything, from the finance seat that you guys are doing that maybe is a little bit different? Because it sounds like a lot of really cool ideas. And I said that half in jest, but you have to, coming from a non-profitable situation to be able to put all of these things in place. I mean, what are some of the things that you're looking at to be able to afford to serve your membership in this way, going to them and making sure you have people in there and replacing ITMs and all the vibe coding? I mean, it sounds cool, but
it is. A lot of conversations between Chad and I. How do we move from these innovative ideas to execution and be able to afford those things? So,
and monetizing them in some way, right?
Yeah, hopefully. But a lot, part of it is just fundamental asset liability management, and that we had we're very leveraged, and we have a really low net interest margin.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we work as an institution in order to improve our margin? We got to decrease our cost of funds. We're really low in comparison to peers there. It should be really high. And so looking at those traditional metrics, but also, kind of going back to the faster that we can have all of our employees understand what good asset liability management looks like and why we price the deposits the way that we do and the loans that we do, and how these products can be helpful for our members and also profitable for us, the faster that we'll continue to recover from this.
Well, that's the power of this team, right? Is you can take the ideas that spin around in my head, and I'm not the only ideas person. Like, this team has come along very quickly to being and it's really, we talk about a psychologically safe space.
Yeah.
Where my team ideates with me. It's not just listening to me come up with ideas. They push back and say, that's stupid. And what do you think of this? And we're like, well, that's stupid. What do you think of this? And it pings around.
You heard them say that?
Yeah, absolutely. He thought he was the only one. But no, we have those open conversations, and everybody's willing to. I was just on the phone with Via, who runs retail, and I sent her a picture of a bus, and I said, this is your new branch. And she's like, great, I can't wait to drive it. And I talked to her this afternoon, and she's like, I already started business planning, and are we really doing this? I said, we're going to do it unless we can't. But my intention is we will do this. And we're building a new branch in an area that has been typically underserved, right? And so we're trying to solve moving into that area, like a drip campaign. Showing them that we're coming while we build, because you can't just build overnight. Although we will build faster in this community, because we will build very likely we will build in shipping containers.
Okay.
Which I know Thomas was totally excited about when I brought up shipping containers. And if you think I'm crazy, go look at them, type in shipping container banks. In foreign countries, they're everywhere.
Really?
If you go to Spain, go to Mexico City, the Netherlands and stuff, that's a thing.
Yeah.
Drop them on a city block, literally in a park, and you have a bank. I don't know why we can't do the same thing.
Yeah.
And nobody, they all ideate with me, and that's, Jay has enabled that. Bob has supported it, and again, Lacey, has made sure that we keep things on the rails and we can do all these things, sometimes concurrently.
Yeah.
And we do that, and we're able to, with Lacey's help and her team, be able to bring those innovative ideas to execution. which of course is the most important part. They just got to be able to hit the street and not just be a cool idea that we talked about in the meeting.
But I'd say our hit rate is pretty darn good. Like we're not batting 1,000. But I've said over and over, this is coming from the startup. I've spent time not only building startups but investing in early stage. Ideas are cheap. It's the execution, and we execute. And I think that is if you looked at our team and you were to pull Jay in here and ask him, and you could even ask the board members, what we say we're going to do, we do. And I think that goes a long ways. Not only credibility with our peers, like Bob and I, and with our board members and the regulators. I think, and it's with our employees too. So
I think an important part of that too is the humility that Jay models for us and that we practice as a team, and that when we make mistakes, we call them out. We call them out quickly so we can move on from it, but also to make sure that everyone in the institution knows that nobody's perfect. And we want those ideas, and hopefully they work out, but sometimes they don't. But the important thing is that we're all trying to accomplish the same mission, and everybody's not just we don't just want their hand, we want their hearts and we want their minds too.
Absolutely. So what's that?
Well, this has been an awesome discussion. We are kind of butting up against the clock, so to speak. So I'd like to just get some closing thoughts from each of you. So what would you want other, credit union leaders to steal from your playbook, or just kind of anything you'd like to share with the audience to wrap this up?
Yeah, I'm an open book. I love talking about this stuff. If you're a credit union leader and you're listening to this, shoot me an email. We can ideate on this, solve for your market. I'm always open to having those discussions. None of this is proprietary, and nobody copies a bad idea, right? Like nobody tries to build something. I'm going to do what you did, Mike, and your idea was terrible.
Right.
I'm going to do what you did because that was a really good idea.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do it better.
Right.
We're in the credit union space. It's friendly. I think we can all
cooperative.
learn.
Yeah,
Cooperative.
absolutely.
We can learn together. So yeah, it's an open. My door is always open. So please reach
Excellent. Yeah, that's great. How about you, Bob?
Yeah, and I would say that, be open to the fact that the solutions for different innovations or problems may lie well outside the area that we might think they're from. So the more that we can have all of our employees understanding the mission and working towards that, and that those brilliant ideas, those innovations for the finance area may come from someone in IT, they may come from someone in HR, but the more that we can all understand where we're going, and as Lacey always reminds us, not just rowing in the same direction, but how we row, when those paddles dip into the water, and the angle that they go at, and the more that we can do that well together, the faster that we'll continue to improve.
Well, this has been really enjoyable. I want to thank you both so much for spending some time with us today. And I guess to people in the audience, reach out if you have any questions, comments, concerns, and they are an open book. Thanks, gentlemen. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you both.
Thanks for your time.
As we conclude our discussion on innovation and transformation, it's clear that successful credit union turnarounds require more than just good ideas. They orchestrate cultural change, disciplined execution, and a willingness to do things differently. The conversation with Chad and Bob from Workers highlighted several critical practices that distinguish institutions that transform from those that simply survive. The three key takeaways from today's conversation. First, culture is the foundation. Second, governance before innovation. And lastly, execution beats ideas. And as Chad emphasized, ideas are cheap, it's the execution. Thank you for joining us on In Your Best Interest. We hope this discussion provides valuable perspective as you consider how to balance innovation with fundamentals and build a culture where transformation is possible at your institution.
The content in this podcast is provided for informational purposes and should not be relied upon as recommendations or financial planning advice. We encourage you to seek personalized advice from qualified professionals regarding all investment decisions. Current and future holdings are subject to risk, and past performance is no guarantee of future results. Podcasts should not be copied, distributed, published, or reproduced, in whole or in part, Information presented herein is for discussion and illustrative purposes only and is not a recommendation or an offer or solicitation to buy or sell any securities. The views and opinions expressed by the ALM First Financial Advisor speakers are their own as of the date of the recording. Any such views are subject to change at any time based upon market or other conditions, and ALM First Financial Advisors disclaims any responsibility to update such views. These views should not be relied on as investment advice, and because investment decisions are based on numerous factors, may not be relied on as an indication of trading intent on behalf of any ALM First Financial Advisors product. Neither ALM First Financial Advisors nor the speaker can be held responsible for any direct or incidental loss incurred by applying any of the information offered. ALM First Financial Advisors is an SEC-registered investment advisor with a fiduciary duty that requires it to act in the best interests of clients and to place the interests of clients before its own. However, registration as an investment advisor does not imply any level of skill or training.